Good evening, fellow investors. My name is Henrik Wehrborn. I'm CEO of Velocys. I'm here to talk to you about how we can harvest the carbon resource in urban trash and in forestry waste and turn it into jet fuel. If anybody here in this room doesn't think it's a good idea to find a way to not let this trash go and sit in a landfill and convert into methane and destroy the planet that way, or if anybody in the room doesn't think that there is a problem by storing excess CO2 in the atmosphere and that it could have to do a little bit about how we behave as humans, I'd suggest you have a drink and you walk out and you come back in half an hour. So those of us who believe that this is a problem but also an opportunity, that's where Velocys comes in. So this is our role here in the market. We have found a rare solution how to convert the carbon that is inherent in all waste, clean it and refine it and convert it into jet fuel. Now, some of you might think, why do we need fuel at all? Just put in a battery and we'll be fine. Okay, so we're going to think about that. If you think that is the solution, again, you can take a break. In order to understand that, we need to do a little bit of chemistry. This chemistry here lesson is produced by my colleague, Neville Hargreaves, who is a PhD in chemistry. I'm just a simple business guy, and I understand this chemistry, and hopefully you don't need a PhD in chemistry. Now, three different main types of fuel. So petrol, or gasoline as they call it in America, you can dilute, substitute, but I would call it dilute that with ethanol, which is essentially alcohol. Relatively easy, from sugar canes or wheat, all kinds of different ways you can produce alcohol. And you can also substitute petrol with batteries and electrify. I think we're all aware of that. Now, it's not entirely easy, and people have questions about sustainability of car batteries and also sustainability of ethanol, given that it produces water inside your engine and can cause problems, and there is a maximum 10 or 15% of ethanol you can put into that gasoline, and it has a much lower energy density than petrol. So it's not great, but it works and it reduces carbon emissions and greenhouse gases to some extent. Now, if you look at diesel, there are some ways you can substitute diesel for heavy road transport as well. You can use essentially rapeseed oil. You can put some rapeseed oil into your tractor, and it produces a bit more smoke, but it works. Now, rapeseed oil can be refined and hydrotreated to be a little bit cleaner than just pure rapeseed oil, but it isn't perfect still, and it is because it contains those two red atoms, which are oxygen. Oxygen weighs 16 times more than hydrogen. So if you have a bit of oxygen in the diesel or in the petrol, you get a lot of weight and no energy. So what the ideal structure is what you have in fossil fuels, which is just carbon and hydrogen. Now, in aviation, it's critically important to have identical fuel. If you substitute the fuel, if you come to pilot and say, I need you to leave the fossil oil in the ground, we're killing the planet. This is not okay. We need to find a way. So you propose to the pilot, let's go for batteries. Now the pilot will tell me that the amount of energy in 1 kilo of jet fuel is 60 times higher than a kilo of the best battery in the world currently. State-of-the-art batteries, 60 times more in a kilo jet fuel. So you're going to bring this battery up to 30,000 feet, and then you're going to get some energy out of it, and you think that's going to work for a jumbo jet. No, it's not going to work. Okay, so then you come with some kind of biojet, which contains the 16 times more heavy molecules, which also generates water in the combustion. And that water immediately at minus 47 degrees up in the sky is going to turn into water crystals, ice crystals. And you're going to have problems in the fuel lines. And you're going to have problems everywhere. And the pilot's going to say no. So the only type of fuel the pilots will accept are a kind of synthetic kerosene where the chemistry is identical to fossil, but it's not fossil. And that's what Velocys can do. It's called synthetic paraffinic kerosene. Not too difficult. You still with me? So for aviation, there is no solution within reach, within the next number of decades at least, to electrify. The battery performance, I think, on average improves 5% per year. To get it 60 times more energy in a kilo battery, it's going to take a while. So let's explore what this synthetic kerosene is and how Velocys can enable that production in large scale. Sounds like an interesting opportunity. So Fischer-Tropsch is the synthetic way of combining carbon monoxide and hydrogen into longer cold chains, the ones that we saw in the middle in the previous slide. How do we do it? We bring solid feedstocks because it needs to be sustainable. So I'm not going to fight with agriculture. And frankly, it doesn't work particularly well with agricultural products. What we do, bring solid carbon-rich waste material, either from forestry or from urban waste. We gasify it. I convert it into carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and we synthesize it back into those longer cold chains that you saw here. And there is no oxygen in those cold chains. Our greenhouse gas reduction that we achieve is between 70 to 100% less than the fossil alternative. While ethanol typically brings down the greenhouse gases by about 20%. And we have, in addition to that, 90% reduction in particulates that causes asthma and all kinds of terrible heart diseases, as well as zero sulfur. And we don't need to ask anybody to change their behavior. What I find so deeply attractive about the Velocys technology that we enable is that I don't need to ask anybody to change anything what they do today when they consume our product. And of course, that the resources that we harvest are in vast supply. So one typical plant that we are proposing right now would consume 500,000 tons of waste. Now, we get paid to process the waste, so the more the better. But just as a reference, in the UK today, 17 million tons of urban waste goes into landfill per year. And our plants will consume 500,000 tons each. So there is no risk, unfortunately, that we're going to run out of waste in this country anytime soon. In addition to that, we're exporting at least 3 million tons a year of waste as well, to allegedly to the Far East, but it seems like much of that gets dumped in the ocean halfway to the Far East. So now this is another picture from Dr. Hargreaves' lab at home. He put the Velocys synthetic diesel in one bucket in one vessel, and then he took a little bit of diesel from the local station, put a wicket in both and lit it up. So have a guess which one is the Velocys synthetic diesel and which one is from the local tapping station. So not only do we cut greenhouse gases massively, but much cleaner fuel. Now, what's the secret sauce here? The secret sauce is a catalyst that is developed at Oxford University Chemistry Department, spin out back in 2004, 2005. Incredibly active catalyst. This is the secret sauce. I can't tell you much exactly how it works, but it took many, many years to find this. It was a chemical process that was invented in 1925 in Germany, which worked so-so. Lots of problems with it, but in a lab it was invented back then and was applied in South Africa for many years with low efficiency, but it worked. So it's well-known technology, but not to the level of efficiency we have developed. In about 2008, we found the perfect partner, which is a reactor manufacturing company in the US that came out of a space program. in Ohio, where they developed something called microchannel cooling. Because one of the secrets I will share you, in order to get the Fischer-Tropsch reaction, which synthesizes carbon monoxide and hydrogen into jet fuel, you need to keep temperature and pressure constant across the whole reaction chamber the whole time. And that's very difficult with violent things like hydrogen and carbon monoxide, where the tendency of the temperature to go to 1,000 degrees. But in order to convert into the benign jet fuel, temperature has to stay at 205 degrees and a certain pressure. That is what we manage to happen in we make it happen in large scale in this particular reactor. So who are these people? I'm CEO. Neville is here. He's head of our waste to fuels business here in the UK. Andrew Morris, CFO. Roger Harris and Ivan, also actually from South Africa, where it's a leading country in this type of technology. And a number of others who we have in Houston and Ohio with us as well. We have experience across a broad range of sciences as well as business. One of the most fascinating things about working in this business is that you need to understand biology, chemistry, physics, money, politics, and a few other things. But if you do, it works and it's wonderful, and it is a huge purpose. Now, lots of people can stand here and say, we think we have the solution, but does it really work at scale? Well, we just finished 5,000 hours of operating that reactor and another two reactors in Oklahoma, producing 1.6 million liters of that kind of fuel that you saw on the picture before. We subjected the reactors to all kinds of stress, and Oklahoma is perfect for that. You can have ice storms, -20, tornadoes, 100-degree Fahrenheit in the summer. You have power failures. You have earthquakes. You have everything in Oklahoma. And during those 2 years, believe me, all of that happened. And the reactors were humming along, and we know how the reactors behave at full scale in difficult circumstances. I'm Swedish. Volvo produces a new engine, new model. You send it to Lapland, you send it down to the desert, you see where it breaks. That's what we did in Oklahoma. Now, hopefully you've seen that Shell and BA and Velocys together have gone in for planning permission in Immingham for a project to convert 500,000 tons of commercial and residential waste into about 50,000 tons of drop-in sustainable fuel for aviation and road. We have a 16-week statutory period when we expect for a planning permission to be approved. The council, the North East Lincolnshire Council, are, needless to say, quite interested and positive and motivated to help us to make sure that this happens. And so that is the state right now in that project. To summarize what we do, the central processing unit of this facility is the Velocys technology, where we synthesize the carbon monoxide and the hydrogen, and that's the yellow block there. What has happened in the last 2-3 years is that some other technologies upstream and downstream have matured and become available at the scale that works for this 500,000 tons a year of waste supply. Now, you might ask, why don't you do 5 million tons or much smaller, much bigger? Well, if you have much bigger than that, you have the bulky nature of the feedstock means that you create a huge traffic jam, simply. So 500,000 tons of waste into one space, that is the ideal, to have a realistic type of economies of scale. But in petrochemical industry, this is quite small. So quite a few of the other units only became available at this relatively small scale relatively recently. That includes preparation of the feedstock, drying it, shredding it, making sure that it can be fed into a gasifier, where we thermally and chemically break the material into these two components that I talked about before. And then, of course, when you have a gas, when you have this waste in a gas form, to remove the small amounts, but still amounts of sulfur and mercury and cadmium and all kinds of other toxic things is quite easy in a gas. Very difficult in solid, but in a gas, you just filter it through methanol and you get rid of 100% of the toxics. So because our reactor needs very clean syngas, and that's what it gets. Therefore, the fuel becomes ultra clean, as you saw before. And the final step of cutting the hydrocarbons into the exact length required for jet fuel or diesel is relatively straightforward, well-known technology provided by one of the major leading providers in this area. Now, this is what it looks like up in Immingham. And we are in an industrial landscape. We have a power station next to us, an oil refinery to the north of us, port, rail, road, natural gas, power, everything we need. It's an absolute ideal site. So very lucky. And the energy estuaries there, they are passionate about renewable energy. They have lots of wind farms already, but the next wind farms is about yesterday. Distributed, renewable, clean, non-fossil fuel is now and tomorrow. So our facility will look like this. 7.7 million invested so far. Ourselves, Shell, BA, and the government. And we are planning to start construction in 2021 and production from 2024. This will represent about 1% of British Airways' global demand. Doesn't sound much, but everything has to start with 1%. And then you build another one, and then we have 2%, and another few more. Similar project in the US, woody biomass. So the forestry industry in the US, massive industry, the Southeast in particular, half of the tree normally gets left behind in the forest. The rest of the tree goes into timber and construction. Now, all that woody biomass in the forest gets converted into what becomes tinder. And then somebody throws a cigarette butt out the window, and then you have a massive forest fire. So no more. Even if you're a complete climate change denier, you still hate forest fires. Devastation of forest fires, and in America in particular. So nothing to do with climate change, just the rules of harvesting forests have changed, and you're not allowed to leave anything behind. And the paper and pulp industry doesn't take any of this anymore because nobody uses any paper. So, are they happy, keen for us to take the wood chips and convert them into jet fuel? Absolutely. And could we have done waste there? Well, not really, because very few people live in Mississippi. So you would have to transport the urban waste for very long distances. Instead, there is a huge concentration of fast-growing forests, which need to be harvested because, like all forests, otherwise they will burn without being harvested. So now, the business model of Velocys is capital light. So when I say our plants, it means that it's the plants where we supply the technology to enable this conversion process. We're a small company listed on AIM, and we're talking hundreds of millions in of course, capital expenditure to provide this, to build these plants. We're not going to own the plants. We provide the reactors, the catalyst, the site license, engineering and commissioning services. That's upfront paid. And then we have, in addition to that, recurring revenues over the 25 years of lifetime of the plant of replacement catalyst, technical support, services to operating plant, including regeneration of catalyst, and royalty of the decarbonization revenues. So combination of upfront and recurring revenues. In summary, how are we doing for time? Oh, not too bad. Rare solution for one of the most challenging sectors to decarbonize. If there was an easy solution that BP or Shell or SAS or anybody had, they wouldn't be working with us. There isn't any solution. Velocys has a solution. We're unlocking trapped energy in abundant waste stocks. We have achieved commercial demonstration. We have 2 projects approaching FEED. And you might have seen, if you have followed our press releases, we have 2 third-party customers already, one in Oregon and one in Japan, who have decided Velocys technology is what they want as a central processing unit for their biorefineries. converting solid feedstocks to jet fuel. That's all for me. Questions, please.
Thank you, Henrik.
How would you compare yourself to competitors such as Powerhouse Energy, who seem to have the same process of putting in waste and getting out syngas?
I have to say I don't know who Powerhouse Energy are and what they do. All I know is that when I get invited to beauty contests, there are 3 companies, and not that company. There are one American company, 2 American companies, and it's Velocys. If it's in the Middle East, or if it's in Japan, or if it's somewhere else, it's the 3 of us. So it's one company called Lanzatech that converts carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into some kind of fuel with bespoke bugs. It's a biological process. And then there is another company that does what we do but has no technology themselves, just brings together technology from us, for example, or others. So it's a good question. My biggest concern is that a lack of competition at this point. It's a bit scary that we don't seem to have a lot of big competitors. But it will come. I'm sure it will come.
How does your price compare to, I mean, the amount of what you produce compared to, say, a litre of kerosene? How does your price compare with that? I mean,
significantly higher. Significantly higher, absolutely.
So are airlines, etc., going to be willing to pay the extra?
Well, British Airways wouldn't invest with us if they wouldn't believe that this is what they have to pay. Norway has a mandatory blending requirement for jet fuel already now. So the airlines there need to buy 1 or 2% of their fuel fossil-free. And in order, if you go out now today and you want to buy fossil-free jet fuel, you have to pay 5 times the price of fossil. So it's going to be more expensive. It's a new technology. In the beginning, the volumes are small, price will be high. But the price is high. But if you buy bottled water, it's many times more expensive than tap water. So it's not the same thing.
And one other question: if you're finally getting a lot of airlines to buy your product, do you have the facilities near airports, etc., to be within range to supply them?
We can supply from Immingham. We can supply to Manchester Airport via pipeline, for example. And given that jet fuel is so incredibly high energy density, to transport jet fuel in road tankers, these kind of volumes is actually not a big percentage cost on the value of jet fuel is so high. So a bit of transportation, in worst case on road. In the US, we plan to do it on long trains, on pipeline. Ideally, it's not a big factor for us. It's such a high value product.
I looked at your share price graph, and it's not pretty viewing.
No.
You've been following this dream for a long time. You've used up a lot of capital.
Yeah.
Why is now a good time for investors to buy your stock? As you know, because the past is not a good indicator.
Now is a good time because tide is rising right now in a big way. You have a real price on carbon. Even a year ago, somebody asked me if I was confident I could get paid a significant premium over fossil equivalent fuels. I wouldn't be so sure. Now I'm absolutely sure. There's evidence for it. Not only there's a price for storing carbon in the atmosphere, but also the mandatory policies coming out makes it inevitable that people have to buy the supply that's available. And Velocys has, in the past, been unfocused. We've been chasing a lot of different types of opportunities in fossil and non-fossil areas, and that doesn't work for a small company. We have gone all in on renewable fuel now. Actually, we're only doing one thing, and we're providing this solution: solid feedstocks, sustainable fuel. That's the reason. Yeah.
Hi. Going on from that gentleman, taking on board that this is a lot more expensive on kerosene for airlines.
Yeah.
And going forward,
Yeah.
Airlines are very competitive,
Mm-hmm.
and the cost per seat per mile is quite high.
Yeah.
And what is the benefit for any airline, really? I know you said they have to do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
but do you have something in the future that will bring the cost down? Because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Business-wise.
our level to drive down the costs with scale, number of plants, slightly bigger plants, of course is going to realize economies of scale going forward.
How long will that
Not in a logarithmic way, but in a decent way in terms of time scale to bring projects to market as well as a capital intensity. It will. And the demand is there today. For any airline today, the risk of doing nothing in this space is shocking. I mean, look at climate change report. They will force people, to force government, they have recommended to force the government to reduce number of takeoff slots and just not build runways and force travel down for vacation and holiday. This is a better solution. This is a positive solution that creates jobs and takes the waste away from being either incinerated or left in landfills. There's not much use, because, to incinerate it is useless, and try to convert it into power is not very clever, given that you can produce power for free from solar or wind. So why burn anything? If you're burning anything to create power today, you failed.
One last question.
I work in sales, one of the things I do, and obviously my end user is the most important person.
To speak up a little bit, even
As an end user, the person who's flying in the plane, where's the knowledge for them to know that this is safe?
Okay, if it's safety, okay. Safety, the fuel is identical to the fossil fuel. That's why. We're not saying it is slightly different, it is identical. So the oil companies we work with and the airlines, they send the fuel to labs. And if there was even the slightest deviation from the certification from these standards, no chance. Zero chance of getting a gallon of off-spec jet fuel into an airport. I've worked in the oil industry for 25 years, and nothing is more rigorously tested than aviation fuel, because everybody knows it's catastrophic if there is even slight deviation. So, and that's why this is the difference with synthetic paraffinic jet fuel that we produce. It is identical. The idea of producing biojet with a little bit of these alcohols in them and say, it's almost okay, and you can blend 1 or 2% and nobody will notice. Not okay for me. Not okay for me. Any pilot I've ever spoken to says no. It might work, but I'm not going to chance it. Only identical chemistry is allowed. And that's why we are in a good space, because it's not easy to copy what we've done.
Thank you very much. Please show your appreciation for CEO of Velocys, Henrik Weibel.